Creationists often put forth the notion of the Genesis account of a worldwide flood. They say it's a fact. The Bible says that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and the water rose 15 cubits above the highest mountain. A cubit is an ancient unit of measurement about the length of your elbow to the tip of your middle finger. So let's go through specifically why a worldwide flood is impossible. One argument put forth is, hey, the planet is 75% water, of course there can be a worldwide flood, lol. It came from the water canopy, which was a layer of water in or above the atmosphere that came down at the time of the flood. Or they will say it came from under the crust. This is the hydroplate theory, where the water came through the mid-ocean ridges when the fountains of the deep broke open because the oceanic and continental plates are in fact floating on water. It will be one of the two or a combination of both. It all depends on which creationist who gets their infallible information from God you ask. So, if one decides to go with the water canopy idea, then one must take into account that geologically speaking, the highest mountain is Mount Everest, which is about 29,000 feet high. If it were to rain enough to raise the global water level to 29,000 feet in only 40 days, it would have to be raining a nice steady 30 feet of water per hour for 40 days in order to cover the top of Mount Everest, the tallest mountain. But wait, if you subscribe to the hydroplate idea, then the tallest mountain would not be 29,000 feet because when the fountains of the deep broke open and the continents drifted at incredible speeds, that formed the mountains. Of course, how silly of me for thinking otherwise. Since the Bible mentioned mountains to begin with, let's be generous and say that the highest mountain on Earth at that mythical time was about 9,000 feet high. So in order to flood the Earth in a time period of 40 days, it would have to rain a convenient average of 9 feet of water per hour. Strangely enough, the water canopy theory would not work because with just the amount of water to flood the Earth, even up to only 9,000 feet, the water vapor or whatever is making up the water canopy would be enough to block out all light from the sun and Earth would be completely dark. But it would account for the 40 days of rain better than the hydroplate idea, because the hydroplate idea claims that all the water jetted out of the mid-ocean ridges all at once, according to Walt Brown, a strong proponent of this idea, with a force of 10 billion hydrogen bombs. Alright, however, the hydroplate idea does not have the problem of blocking out the sun. So what if the creationist combines the two ideas? I mean, when it comes to Noah's global flood, it can't possibly only be the water canopy idea because it would have flooded 5 miles high and there simply is no place for the water to go afterwards. And it can't possibly only be the hydroplate idea because that would not be enough to account for island chain skyouts nor a constant 40-day rainfall. So the best way to go about this would be to combine the two. Split the work in half. Use the 9,000 foot high tallest mountain from the hydroplate idea, 4,500 feet of water raining down from the water canopy, and 4,500 feet of water flooding from the hydroplates, just to have a bare minimum of water. The combination would account for 40 days of constant rainfall and the formation of mountains. So, it's flood day. Noah crams all of the nondescript different kinds of animals on his ark, and it begins to rain, raining on an average of 9 feet of rain per hour, unbelievably large amount of rain. And this is not just a cloudburst, this is planned to persist for another 40 days. Noah's Ark is getting hammered, but it's a golly gosh darn good thing that the Ark is made of gopher wood. But since gopher wood has never really been truly identified, it should be safe to assume that gopher wood is about as strong as steel. Moving on, it's been raining for about 3 days now non-stop. The sea level has risen about 130 feet. Meanwhile, just a side note, the entire Earth has been completely dark up until this point because even with just 4,500 feet worth of water in the vapor form above the atmosphere, that is more than enough to block out the light from the sun. Granted, a few normal storm clouds can nearly do the trick. And that's not to mention the 5 miles of water that would be necessary had the water canopy been the only source of flood water without the hydroplate idea helping out. So it's completely pitch black, but just for the sake of arguments, all this time everyone can see in the dark just fine. Or not, maybe everyone is blinded and cannot see. Regardless, it's nearing the end. It's been about 35 days since the rain began to fall, it's still pitch black, the ocean level climbed another 4,000 feet or so, and just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the fountains of the deep break open. That's right, it's hydroplate time. We need those mountains formed one way or another, am I right? So talk about complete utter chaos. At this point, the continents are flying around at 45 miles an hour, causing massive seismic disturbances on the ocean floor, which is causing tsunamis at the ocean surface, which is probably at about 6,000 feet by now. But it's a golly gosh darn good thing that the Ark is made of gopher wood, because the Ark is definitely tumbling around like a corkscrew, and this kind of treatment would bust apart any other Ark made of any other kind of wood. And that's not even to mention the enormous amount of heat being released by something of the force of 10 billion hydrogen bombs going off. This would raise the average global temperature a few hundred degrees or so just to make things a little more interesting. A few days later, the continents slow down, the tsunamis calm down, the sky clears up for the first time since creation, and Noah's Ark made of gopher wood survived the torment and lived happily ever after. After, of course, the water mysteriously disappears. It would have to be in that order too, because if the hydroplate deal happened first, the mountains would be higher and would cause more work for the water canopy and ultimately leave more water to magically disappear away, and the laws of magic forbid any more than 10,000 feet of water to disappear at one time. Right. So do you see why we can't really take those two ideas seriously, even if they work together? Regardless of which way you cut it, it just works out to an impossibility. Furthermore, with all that, it leaves absolutely no trace. If there was a global flood, here's what you would expect. You would expect one huge global unified layer. Why, you may ask? Because one flood causes one layer. The so-called layers that dirt and water settles into is called a graded bedding. It's where the sediments are settled from the most dense toward the bottom to the least dense towards the top. We do not find this on a massive scale in the real world. We find many layers of different materials of different densities arranged in no particular order with their own separate graded beddings. Something you would not expect if a global flood occurred. Additionally, you would expect things like the Grand Canyon to be a straight line, and not all curved like it is, because flood canyons and flood rivers are caused by fast-moving water, and fast-moving water happens to travel in a more straight line. Just by looking at the Grand Canyon, we know that it was carved slowly, because it does not display the shape that it would if it was carved by fast water. Again, you cannot claim that one event laid down all of the layers and carved curving, meandering canyons into those layers. You can't have both, because if sediments are deposited by water, it will be soft, and if you try to carve a canyon in it, there will be no vertical faces like we see on the Grand Canyon, because, well, it will be too soft. So either one or the other. Pick one. But sorry, they both won't work, so tough shit on that one. Additionally, we would expect to find many fossils in this one layer, mixed up and laid down in no particular order as well. At least, we would expect to find fossils in the geologic column in no particular order as well. Instead, what we find is millions of fossils, with none of them out of place. Not one, none. Awfully interesting for a chaotic flood, wouldn't you say? And finally, saying that there are other flood myths from other cultures around the world don't do jack to support such a ridiculous idea of a global flood. Sure, there are ancient flood myths from other cultures. That tends to happen on a planet with water on it. Additionally, that does tend to happen when you have an ancient culture near a river or some other body of water that is prone to flooding every once in a while. And finally, even if there was a global flood and that flood covered the world with just a few hundred feet of water for 40 days, 99% of all land plant life would be dead, drowned, gone. This means no plants for a while, and no food for Noah's animals when he lands his boat. This means dead habitat, dead animals, no food, nothing. Everything would be a barren wasteland with nothing significant living on it. And ladies and gentlemen, that is why Noah's global flood did not happen. This is what happens when you try to give a naturalistic explanation to a mythical event. Don't forget to rate, favorite, subscribe. That's all I have to say. Have a nice day.